Here we go. Okay, here we go. So I get to play the host this time. So,
Hooray!
yeah, thank you. So it's Lou Martin here, channel and student of consciousness, and the lovely Poppy Sprague, therapist extraordinaire and online force of nature. How are you?
Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome.
Wonderful. I'm really wonderful.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I'm glad we could do this. I mean, again, of course, you and I are friends anyway, so it's just a joy to get to share. But you were telling me about we're talking a little bit about men's spiritual issues, and we want to chat about that for a moment.
Absolutely. If I unplug my earphones, let me know if
I'm sure
you can still hear me. Okay, can you?
it's not quite as good. The microphone's better with the headset.
Okay.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
I often look at myself and think I look like I'm driving a plane. Perhaps that's symbolic.
It's very dashing.
Okay, good. Tell me the question again. I'm sorry.
Sure, sweetheart. So you and I started to talk and get excited about men and healing men's issues and this kind of thing.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, get us started. You found
okay.
You found a new teacher that you're very excited about.
Definitely, and I think this is the thing about the more we, I suppose, are stubborn in what it is we want, namely sitting in that space between what we're familiar with but isn't fulfilling enough. That kind of sense of there's got to be better than this, but the majority of people I find tolerate through fear that there won't be something better.
Right.
So we stay, the familiar is very seductive. So for me,
right,
that I often talk about this because I visualize these things. It's like, the cowboy movies with the tumbleweed. It's kind of like so many of us sit in that space, and it's kind of an anxiety space of, is anyone coming? Where's my tribe? Oh my gosh. So I've been experiencing that more and more recently where, I'm pretty defiant, and I know at least spiritually, intellectually, there's so many people, and there's just now sort of like the doors have opened, and here are so many men of all ages discussing topics that, it moves me to tears.
Good.
to think of particularly men, particularly my age, I think, sort of 40 and younger, who, that's not fair. No, that's not fair.
No.
It's the culture for me of a wider global issue.
Yes.
That says, women too, obviously, that says, don't rock the boat, ego stuff. And men particularly get missed because obviously it's more acceptable in some regards for women to talk about emotional issues and spiritual issues. And partly, I guess, because of my own stuff, I've not been as open to how many men there are out there talking about masculinity. The Mask of Masculinity is a book. I think it's a beautiful title. Lewis Howes just brought this book out. He's a young sort of previous athlete, now more philanthropic, spiritual role model for younger people. He's probably mid-30s. And now I found this Drew Canoli, who's seemingly, if you don't sort of scratch the surface, this kind of American tanned, muscly, green juice man. And actually, as I've sort of scratched the surface, there is this incredibly grounded, spiritual, kind-hearted man who talks about men and vulnerability and the globe and vulnerability and how we push it away. So, of course, as a psychologist and therapist and coach, I'm in the process of sort of integrating all those things and not knowing many people in the field who sort of has a previous career of psychotherapy and now is coming into this progressive place of where do we go from here, rather than just looking at the difficult stuff that obviously we've survived. Now, what kind of survival do we want?
Sure.
So, of course, I role model for people, I guess, stubbornly protest that if we stay in that tumbleweed place, there's no need for guns on our holster. The good guys are coming, Right.
Well, so, sorry, go on.
Well, previously for me, I've been such a great advocate of Iron John, you know, one of
Right.
Robert Bly's books,
Yeah.
and that whole men's movement, and
Yeah.
Men Web, which is, you know, fairly kind of older approach online.
Uh-huh.
Because the kind of philosophy and sustenance is there, but it isn't one of those gimmicky colored websites that are very attractive. It's more, you need to be established, in my view, about men and masculinity and the importance of doing this to be sort of gravitate toward it. So I'm just thrilled to see more and more men discussing these issues who, you know, as a woman, I guess, because I kind of talk fast and I'm quite informed myself, it's one thing to talk about men's issues, but to have men role modeling for men to talk about and experience and take action around men's issues. And when I say that, I mean predominantly spirituality, meditation, vulnerability, and how vulnerability and courage are the same thing. And yet we make vulnerability a swear word. And of course that blocks courage, it blocks sort of ethical leadership, it blocks spiritual, you know, a sense of connection and God and whatever anybody else's sort of base point is to connect with themselves and instinct and all of that wonderful stuff. It gets blocked by this sort of, you know, be a tough guy and, you know, don't get in touch with everything that informs everything.
Well,
so I'm delighted.
Yeah, no, it's honestly, it's typically shame, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, men get shamed out of our emotions, and vulnerability, as you said, becomes an invitation to attack sometimes from that
Yes.
place of being ashamed of our feelings or being ashamed to be vulnerable.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, as I said before we started here, this has really come up for me that I really do want to create something online to start working with men's issues, and I haven't felt any kind of a pull or a draw towards that in like a decade. I actually did a men's workshop. Yeah, I'm excited. Well, and I've been seeing that starting to happen, and of course culturally, all these stories of sexual harassment and abuse and rape and these, you know, terrible things that women have been dealing with, in silence here for a long time. And the Me Too movement, you know, that's raising the level of the conversation quite high for us to face these things.
For me, I mean, here we go. My hair's standing on end.
Oh, good.
Whenever that happens, I know I'm supported with what I'm about to say.
Yes, I'm ready for takeoff.
For me, and now I've gone cold. How interesting. Those issues have been around for men for as long. And yet, in my view, which I guess is fairly informed in terms of my history of psychotherapy,
Yeah.
In my view, the men who come forward and talk about these issues often either are desperate and really, really, you know, on the edge, or there's a more sort of divine feminine that they've embraced to be able to share and talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, I guess, you know, for want of a better term, the tough guys still have that experience but don't discuss it, you know. I think, what did I read the other day? Men are 5 times more likely to suicide than women.
Yeah.
And I think 80%, at least in San Diego, which is a huge homeless problem, 80 something percent of the homeless are men.
Right. Yeah. I saw this online, similar. Yeah.
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 So for me, you know, I discussed this actually. Is it okay if I go on about this for a second?
Yeah, this is what we're here for you and I to just walk away and have a good time.
I discussed this with some friends on Turkey Day.
Right.
We were sitting around the table, and of course, the Me Too movement came up in discussion.
Right.
And one of the ladies, well, no, here we go. This is how it began, is the daughter, a young girl who's about 18, said, within context of the conversation, that when she was at school, in the locker room, when they would, you know, get changed for phys ed, I think they call it in the States, but
Yes.
you know, PUs we call it in the UK.
Right.
The male, I don't know, athletic support teacher, for want of a better term, would stand in the ladies' locker room. So they would literally be, you know, naked in every sense of that word. And the young woman who was the phys ed teacher would essentially collude with it, because she would also be in the locker room. But apparently, because she was his subordinate, she was colluding through, you know, I assume, which I'm pretty sure is correct, a sort of peer pressure sense of, I can't challenge the authority. So she colluded with the inappropriateness. So as we went on to talk about Me Too and the women who are coming forward, thank goodness, I sort of said, well, for me, I'm so happy that people are starting to talk about humanity and the truth.
Yes.
But for me, the bigger issue, which is, as I see it, the Me Too movement is a symptom of the bigger issue, which is people do not talk about the truth, period. So we can have a focus at the moment on a certain area of women or race or whatever it might be, age, you know, people talking about the millennials and all of that kind of stuff. For me, this is a global culture where we collude with, don't say anything, don't rock the boat, don't make it uncomfortable, don't challenge, don't cause conflict. And of course, I guess one of my catchphrase sentences is, those who avoid conflict are in the conflict and are causing it. Globally, ripple effect. If I say to you, I'm fine, so I'm lying and covering up, I'm educating those around me to do the same.
Right. Denial.
Exactly. You said the other day, when I was talking about white women coming forward more so in the media, at least, and you said denial is, you know, not just a river in Egypt. Which,
yes, I avoided that one line. Right. But can I just say, you know, that yes, to carry on with what you've gotten into here, which is so powerful. You know, the truth sets us free, but it often pisses us off at first.
Oh, and others, yes.
And others, yes. My guides say that healthy relationships are conscious agreements where the promises are met, or if not able to be met, then new agreements are made. And unhealthy relationships, like you said, colluding, you know, and denial. Unhealthy relationships are, don't confront me about this, and I won't confront you about that, and we'll just carry on like everything's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and as you said, it's the fuse is very short these days on us being able to continue our illusions of separation through denial.
For sure. And, you know, for me, I'm so glad to say this seems like progressively the minority are the people who are shut down, locked up, symptomatic, epidemic of quietness. The balance is tipping, in my view, particularly given we can't deny this so well with, you know, the American president in office. I often get, you know, questions and so on about people being symptomatic, so people being very physically unwell, because of course if we don't talk about these issues, it goes into the body never lies, it's so on our side to sort of out us there's a problem. But we talk about the symptoms of the dis-ease so readily, and often that's what's focused on in support groups and so on. And again, for me, it's very important, but that's kind of the smoke to the fire of the cover-up. Exactly.
Yeah. That's right. And as you and I know, my dear, that when people feel safe, loved, and supported, which is what we get to do, you know, in our work with people, we hold that place in ourselves and with whoever we're sitting with, so that they can make that journey back into accepting their feelings, including pain and fear, anger and sorrow, all of those lovely yummies we get to go through, so that they can, you know, feel safe to release that denial, that struggle, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
one of the things that so profoundly affected me, and I think it was a couple of years ago now, when you and I had a session where you were just being your extraordinary self. And you said something that I've known, but you said it so beautifully. Do you remember about men and the pattern with men and anger and pain, and the
Well,
pattern with
sure.
women?
Sure. I mean,
That was just amazing to
thank
me.
you. Well, yeah, bless your heart, and you're extraordinary too. So it's a pleasure. Um, the rule book is women are allowed to be sad but can't be angry, and men can
Yes,
be angry but can't be sad.
absolutely. And that is it.
Thank you. And it's what we deny that controls us, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah. What we resist persists. That
Yeah,
often goes on in my
yeah,
mind when I
yeah,
teach.
yeah. So,
Mm.
so you know, when we make this journey back into that place of surrender and acceptance and healing, then you know we get to see, you know, in ourselves and in each other, the masks fall away. You know, the
So,
pretense and the disguise and the illusions begin to fall away. And then what comes from the other side of that, of course, is vulnerable and
yeah.
beautiful and radiant. You know, there's usually this release of light along with the laughter.
Well, quite. That's what I was thinking. It's the light to the dark. You know,
Right, right.
it it profoundly. It is. It's the yin to the yang. Profoundly shifts, because, as I often say to people I teach, is we have no idea how people feel toward us and what they think of us when we present from behind a facade. You know, the adapted self, or however you want to talk about it.
Yeah,
I can't possibly know if you're moved by what I say, or if you have respect for what I say, or our beliefs are in alignment, or you care for me or love me or anything, if I'm not being myself. I've got no assessment of it. So many of us are rejected and hurt and angered and so on, but we don't know each other. So because we're blocking each other with all of our projections and, you know, you want me to be this way and egotistical stuff,
sure.
we get rejected, and we're not being rejected essentially because we're not putting ourselves forward.
Well, that's right. We reject ourselves first by being
Exactly.
vulnerable and pretending something that is not necessarily our best our deepest truth. You know,
Yes.
but like you're saying, it's great, Poppy. You know, vulnerability is really to me it is the feminine energy. You know,
Yes.
and the courage to be vulnerable is the masculine support of that feminine beauty and intimacy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then when we're like you know, watching actors, you know, I'm mad for acting and films and theater and all that, so watching these interviews today with some actors that I love, you know, they never know what is happening or where they're going, just like you and I don't, you know, so often, and especially in a healing session with people. But you know, we take all of our experience and our skills and our own personal relationship to the truth, and we put that in loving service to, you know, hold that space again so that something real can emerge.
Absolutely.
And that is transformative every time.
I don't know if I've heard what I wanted to hear with this, but you know, the iceberg kind of metaphor
Sure.
of, we show that, you know,
Yeah.
5% on the surface.
Right.
I heard that, I think it was this Drew Canoli that said this,
Yeah.
and it feels right that the divine feminine is that 5% that's prepared to stick its iceberg top out and say, you know, I'm here. And the divine masculine is the 95% underwater. That seems to fit, but even if it isn't, that's profound. I'd
Sure.
known the ratio is extraordinary, but
Sure.
I hadn't realized 5% is there.
Well,
And that would, of course, make sense.
sure. I mean, that's, you know, all metaphors are inherently a bit wobbly because the metaphor isn't the thing itself, right? Analogies.
Yes.
But yeah,
Sorry.
no,
Absolutely.
yeah. But I mean, you know, you've heard me say this: the feminine is the garden, and the masculine is the gate around the garden. And
Okay.
and so the masculine is the mind and the body because that is static and fixed and
Mm,
focus. That's our
mm,
focus. Our mind and body is our inherent focus. But the feminine is the emotion and the spirit that is always moving and always in flux and always in motion, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then in the analogy, the masculine, the courage and the sense of worth and respect and honoring of the feminine is meant to say, I trust you, I don't trust you. I feel safe, I don't feel safe. These kinds of
Exactly.
right, right.
And I mean, if this interview went viral, I'd probably get into a bit of trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Oh, good.
You can't have one without the other.
Right, right.
And so with men's issues, I was at a Tony Robbins event, who
Yeah.
again, if you don't know about him, he can seem a gimmicky American big mouth. But actually, if you pay attention, oh my God, the man is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah.
Mind-blowingly so.
Yeah.
And I went to Date with Destiny, which is his favorite event, really, 6-day event in Florida every Christmas time.
Yeah.
And he did this piece, which, he did a documentary with some people, I Am Not Your Guru, which is
Yes.
profound, but they left out the pièce de résistance, in my opinion.
I did see that.
Which is, nobody would have unless you've been to the event.
Yeah.
So again, I'm outing it, but I have to. Through the work that we're doing in that conference, it's very confronting. I mean,
Sure.
I'm pretty hardcore, but that was,
Sure.
wow. Through helping people integrate and giving permission as a very masculine man in many regards, giving the men, who's probably realistically about 50-50 men, women,
it looks
by
like
giving them incredible permission, but modeling of, unless you get in touch with truth and vulnerability, you cannot be a masculine man.
right.
So there was, all of this, and again, for me, I think this is epidemic. Angry women who are resentful because they're men, or men generally don't support them, aren't, the soft male, as it were, in the negative, and women are sort of suppressing and angry and manipulative often with men who are in a more subordinate role. And we saw this extraordinary thing where he triggered people, men, and the men in the room, it happened in a heartbeat, stood, and I can't ruin it, but stood and made a fist pump, actually. And I was sat there in between, because there was this tremendous roar of men in the room. And I sat sort of in between. And as men stood up, I just burst into tears to suddenly feel, as a very masculine woman myself, okay, now the balance is right. And I feel protected by these men, in my view, as it should be. So suddenly we had this outpouring of women in the group. I mean, there's 10,000 people there sharing, wow, I now feel supported. I feel like I'm in a brother sisterhood. I feel this is a tribe. Now I know my role. I don't have to be angry at you people for letting me down. Right. But that couldn't have been facilitated without their preparedness to be real. Sure. And to say, this is what I need, and even listen, because so many people, male or female, don't even know who they are or what it is that's going on to inform them how to be.
Well, can I ask you this? I did see I Am Not Your Guru, and it was amazing. And we've talked about Tony, of course, but the sense, it feels like there's one missing piece here, which is, did he not ask the men to commit to honoring and respecting the women?
Over and over and over and over.
So you see, that's what they were asserting. That's why you felt.
Oh, yes.
Okay. You see, because it's, men are pump fists, doing this, the fist pump and screaming at football games all over America every week.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Their life feels safe, loved, and supported.
Exactly. That is reactive masculinity, in my well, I was going to say, in my view, it is. Whereas this was about core strength, grounded expression of masculinity. Sure. And you could feel it,
Right.
And it although he said that, and that was the culture that he was teaching from, it was more, what's that word? Insidious in a good way, if that is possible.
Well, the
It,
word that
it
comes to
was
me is
more subtle.
okay.
So it was kind of, yeah, it was almost subtly, and you know, it was, excuse me, it was very much education within it, that's what we were all looking for.
Sure.
um,
Sure.
but it equally felt more instinctive, that there was this kind of consistent permission, more
Right.
subtly, and the lid comes off and the real man comes out.
Right.
So
Right.
it and the feel, I mean, I've been around very aggressive reactive men a lot,
Yeah.
and I get it. The feeling was entirely different of
Sure.
the masculinity. It was
Sure.
profound.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's brilliant. I mean, the difference there is respect. You know,
Yes.
this is why this wound between men and women around sexuality and relationship and support and agreements, you know, and addiction. I mean, you know, these energies run through our whole culture every day, and people are struggling with these energies every day if they're not learning what you and I, you know, have learned from Tony Robbins and each other and other wonderful teachers, which is that, you know, you can't receive something that you're not willing to give to yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And then you can say, yes, I respect myself, and I need you to respect me as well.
Absolutely. And
Right.
this is why, you know, we can long for and yearn for and hope for all kinds of wonderful things in life. But as you say, if we're not prepared to consider, well, who do I need to be in order to attract that thing?
Yes.
Because I can't just sit in my bed angrily
Right.
press and snooze about the life I don't want, unless I'm prepared to get up and be open to receiving that. And that's, of course, why, one, we don't get it, or two, it's such a painful experience where it comes into our life, whatever that is, a relationship, a job, a, you know, experience, and we cannot keep it because we're not in conscious alignment with that thing. So we
Right.
lose it, and it's devastating, of course.
Right. Right.
But we're not educated about that stuff. I mean, any of this stuff we're
Sure.
not educated
Sure.
about. In fact, worse, so many, because it is an epidemic of the teachers, role model suppression, that again, we're having an education that says, don't be you.
Well, you can't teach what you don't know. I mean, this is
Exactly.
right. So this is why you and I are going to Tony Robbins or the Drew or, you know, whoever we find, who we go, yes, that's someone who rings my bell. That's a truth
Yeah.
that I relate to. And, you know, um, the this journey that we're all on right now with such tremendous acceleration and intensity, you know, is, you know, for me, it's the return of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Of course, they have to be in balance with each other. And, you know, it's great to see men starting to really open up and show up
Yeah.
and be willing to be emotional and vulnerable and take responsibility for our emotional impact on each other and ask for
Yeah.
guidance and help from the people in our lives, including the women in our lives who have a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
You know,
And
there's a sorry, just that for a man to ask a woman to help him learn to heal and to grow, that's a big journey for most men in the world. You know?
oh, yes,
Yeah.
and equally, I think in part there's a resentment in women to take that role.
Yes, well, yes, I agree with you completely. Let me just say one thing, and then I want to hear what else you want to say about that. My experience with couples and in my own relationships with women and, you know, this whole journey here that we're all on is that women, you know, so much of the work that I've done has been with women up until now. And so
Mm.
much of the work with women has centered around the father wound, which Robert Bly also talks about with men. And
Yeah.
in the women's story, you know, you've heard this, when father is not emotionally nurturing, emotionally present, supportive, and nurturing, then
Mm-hmm.
you know it eats at the girl's sense of self-worth, and she says,
Mm-hmm.
why can't I have the kind of love that my girlfriends have with their father or their,
Exactly.
Okay, so you know that journey. I know that journey as a man, working with women. But what I find, and we've done this work together, is that when women are given that support to come back to the core of their emotional being, unconditional love, spirit, source, then there's a rebirth that happens. Men too, of course, when we make this descent into the core of our emotions, and we stop judging them, and we stop fearing them, and we stop projecting them onto each other, and we just take responsibility for our part of the journey, then we can have that death of the illusion, and then we have that rebirth, which is, okay, whatever I'm carrying now, this is a deeper connection to my truth. And that's the empowerment and the awakening that we're all moving through on one level.
Yeah. And for me, it's a funny one. For me, my experience of women and women's issues can be that I include myself because I think it's a phenomenon. We want men to be accessible. We want men to be present. It's this kind of, essentially, men want their women to be happy and women want their men to be present. And that is impossible. If the man isn't present, the woman's not happy. If the woman's not happy, the man isn't present even more.
Right.
So for me, women can want their men to be more, I suppose, accessible, but the job to help them do that, we might protest. I think this is fair. We might protest that I can help and so on, but essentially it's not our fill in the blank with a swear word role.
Right.
That when men are raised by sort of feminine men, yes, which is a good thing, but if it's more top heavy, they need a role model for the masculine male who is that, because he's informed by the feminine as opposed to he's sort of covered with it. So, and you cannot have somebody who's grounded as a man who is informed by courage and all of that stuff, is if he isn't modeled with vulnerability. So Robert Bly talks about this. There's no, in our culture, thresholds of change. We're not in a tribe where you're invited and modeled to be the man who is informed by spirit and not everything. We have go down the pub with dad, get drunk, fall over, punch someone, and then suddenly you're a man.
Well, yes, or get laid, and now you're a man.
Well, or both. Or other things. There's gradients, obviously, but this is what Lewis Howe talks about, and the athlete talks about in his book, Mask of Masculinity, is that he didn't talk about for years the bullying he had at school, really as a result of being trained through being raped again and again by a man. And then, of course, that is, mimicked, I suppose, because of his energy in bullying and suppression. And, he's a very intelligent man, but classically, again, he had learning difficulties, but ergo, he's a genius. And then fell in love with a very masculine woman, of course, who was abusive. And then reactively, he was a sort of use and abuse bad boy in order to keep the women away, hiding behind this shell of, I'm going to reject you before you reject me. And I'm not actually sure, because I haven't read the book myself, but I am recommending it to everyone on the basis I've seen him in many interviews talking about it. Is however and whoever mentored for him to come with all of that information into a place of, okay, now I can be in really rooted alignment with God, source, spirit, higher self, however you want to put it. And now he's actually in this place where he is a teacher and a mentor and a model for men to be talking about whatever's going on. And similarly, Preston Smiles, equally, he's a young guy who talks, what's his thing called? Man Cave, who is equally somebody that has, courageously enough founded, I suppose, is a bit of a Freudian slip, it's absolutely true. So in order to find that stuff, in my opinion, you must get to this place that says there's a permission-based something that allows the doors to open. Kind of like a client that I had come to me, brilliant man, who vulnerability was not only a swear word, it was so threatening. And he said the only time he would be moved to tears would be in private at the opera. He would take himself privately because he would know there could be that release. And now he's like, Poppy, oh my God, vulnerability is where the portal opens to spiritualism and masculinity, actually. And he's now in this place where, of course, the byproduct of coming through this is able to be vulnerable by saying Lou, can we go back to what you said the other day? Because that didn't fit for me. And really, I don't know what I set up between us, but that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
That is courage and vulnerability. So he's now in this incredible position as a mentor himself to set boundaries and limits on the basis of being vulnerable. So it's just, let's get talking about it as an epidemic as opposed to the reactive stuff.
Right. Well, boy, you said so much there. That's so powerful. I mean, I got to attend a couple workshops with Robert Bly when I was growing up in LA there in my 30s, and to have the model of a good man, an honorable man, a man that I personally respected. Growing up, there were not a lot of men that I respected. They didn't move me. They didn't inspire me. John Lennon, Pablo Picasso, you find them where you take them. You find them where you can get them. But when you see someone like Bly in person, or you see these people online, you have that sense of this energy that comes through them, and it's what Gandhi used to call the truth force, or the love force. And I think we need to talk about the shadow also, of course, because when people are raped or abused or humiliated or shamed or mistreated as children, and then they haven't yet found the resources, of healing, of therapy, of spiritual awakening, etc., they're really lost in the culture with addiction and obsession and compulsion, basically trying to escape their pain. I'm speaking from personal experience, I want to tell you. And, when you go through all of that and then you find, well, I still haven't healed my pain, what else is there? Then you start being willing to make this inner journey, that first it's the last thing you want to do. And eventually it becomes the basis of your conscious life every day, which is to listen to, trust, and follow our inner guidance, to feel safe, loved, and supported, to connect with our center and know that we have one, to love ourselves, all these kinds of things. But until we begin to be able to have the willingness and the access to the resources to do that, the shadow is basically running our lives.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So what we're all looking for, men and women, in relationship, in my experience, is as you said, women want to feel supported and cared for and respected by their partners, and that's a huge struggle because of all the baggage that we're all carrying about a lot of these things. And the culture we live in is so anti-healing and anti-spiritual and so exploitive. And when you have the bad king running the country at the moment, things are particularly dark. But the darkness invites the light. And so, people like all of us are being challenged to rise to the occasion here and, find more light and find more opportunities to be the light and to shine the light. And all of this is the good news, I think, for all of us is that we now have a map. It's not like there's no map. The one that comes to my mind, who I really love, is Russell Brand.
Yes.
He's a personal hero right now because he is gone through the shadow and the darkness, and he's found his path through the 12 steps and TM. And he's saying, look, folks, this is what peace of mind looks like. This is what humility and freedom looks like. And it's quite liberating. You might want to
Yes.
try some.
Yes.
So,
And that he's another role model. I mean, any of these people we're mentioning obviously can appeal to the different interests and personalities of others, because they just have something different to offer, obviously. With
yeah,
Russell Brand, you know, one of the things I think, well, obviously a trait of all of these people, including yourself, is but I see that in Russell a lot, once we accept us and we see that whatever it is, humiliation or whatever it is, informs humility, etc., I mean, you can never sort of befriend fear, but we can sort of use it as a motivator. You're not fearful of or in any way defined by how we are received and met by others. It is, I love me, I like me, I know I'm a good person, I know I'm doing whatever I'm doing for the greater good, and I'm doing the right thing, hand on heart, and whether you receive me or not is a bonus if you do and a lesson if you don't, or a blessing. As this is, again, is clear. Drew Canole and his ability to be so grounded has really impacted me. He says challenges are not only lessons, but they're blessings. So he calls it blessings, which I just think is incredible. That
right.
People can be fearless once you find yourself and accept yourself.
Right.
This is the irony.
Right.
We're in less conflict because we're not dictated to by society.
Yeah.
And therefore, if we're received, which we are, of course, ironically, because people want to be in that place of happiness and joy, we don't have to go around worrying about how other people will be. We are able to say, okay, if somebody has a reaction, there's going to be a very good reason for it. It's tapping into a part of them that they don't want to receive. It's not personal.
Sure.
So we don't have to be so exhausted trying to manipulate ourselves and think about what's going on. You can just be free to be yourself and get on and do some good work in this world.
Yeah. That's well said, hon. I think the challenge is that if we don't define who we are to ourselves with great clarity, then other people's unconscious projections of confusion or competition or fear or whatever it might be, can drown us, basically.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, and Drew, more power to him, and Lewis and all the rest here. Russell Brand, when people are inspired, then you can feel that. There's a sense of, again, freedom and possibility, and it's not an argument about lack and limitation and struggle and blame and all the rest of it. But it is, honestly, I'm telling you, for me over here, it is a daily process of not falling back asleep, basically.
Yes.
Because the energies are quite thick.
Yes.
Planet to keep us in this old nightmare. But thank God, many of us are learning how to wake up.
Quite. And I was writing yesterday, and I did a poppy ramble, and the kind of punchline was, people who are in this place that we're discussing are excited to bugger it up, whatever, because there's even more learning in there, and then we're even more of a better person, and then we can offer even more and receive even more. So there is this kind of, oh, I got it wrong, great, tell me what your experience was, now I can manipulate that in the positive, and oh my gosh, what a better person I am for it, as opposed to this, I have to be perfect, and if I'm not, I'm this terrible failure.
Right.
It is actually what shapes us.
Sure.
It's funny that it's just funny. It's
no,
incredible.
I hear you. Honestly, that's everything. I mean, there's a Zen koan. I mean, I love what you're saying. It's really cutting edge, my friend, as usual. There's a Zen koan, a little Zen story where the head of the monastery is getting served his lunch, and it's a salad, and he's a vegetarian, and the chef has mistakenly cut up a green snake, and
oh wow, okay,
all right, so a serpent, yeah. So he finds, the head of the monastery finds the snake's head in the salad, and he asks the chef to come and talk to him, and the chef says, "Thank you. and eats the snake's head basically in the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean that's a little much perhaps, but the point is that
It's perfect.
everything is perception, and when we
Absolutely.
take our limitations, like you're saying, it's very enlightened, and embrace them as an opportunity for greater freedom and greater empowerment, then they become a blessing in disguise.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And that is, I mean, yeah, that is survival of the fittest.
Well,
That is where,
that's well up the mountain.
oh yeah,
You're well above the tree line when you're thinking in
yeah,
that way. Yeah.
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 Tell me this. I heard somebody say I'll meet you in the fifth dimension yesterday. What does that mean?
Well, okay, that's like that's the next book here, my dear. I had a great conversation yesterday. There's two names I'll give you to answer that question. The first one is, her name is Anelia, Inelia Benz, Benz. I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
Benz. I haven't met with her. We've emailed, but I've chatted with this other lady. Her name is Kira Diane Lester, and Kira and I chatted for 2 hours yesterday. And Kira, this is the preamble of that is, she was born conscious of knowing that she was a spiritual being coming into a human experience, and so was Anelia. And so Kira's had a blending with her higher self since she was 5 years old, and she actually, at the age of 2, she had an insect and she was playing with it, and she broke its wing or whatever, and she had an experience of her cosmic oneness at the age of 2 years old. She realized that she was one with all of life. So she does activation work, and she's very busy and very popular, which is great to see. And but basically, I was chatting with her about the dimensions. The dimensions are levels of consciousness, like using that analogy of the mountain and being above the tree line a moment ago. And so, yeah, it's a perfect question. It's a perfect place to answer that. As we shift our consciousness into greater authenticity and greater spiritual wisdom, which is freedom and love and all of that, inspiration, creativity, all of that, then we start to live from and with the higher self, which really is that part of us that's already living in these higher dimensions. And so
Yeah.
what Kira was saying to me is basically, also Patricia Coda Robles, that I recommend to everyone, eraofpeace.org. She's brilliant. And so what Patricia and Kira and others have been saying is that as we, the ascension process is this process of raising our consciousness, raising our vibration, as Abraham says. And as we learn to live in this conscious state more deliberately and more intentionally and for longer periods of time, then spirit and our guides and our higher self and these beings of light that are living in these other realities can begin to interact with us. And that's what really this whole huge transitional period from 1987 to 2018, 2023, this whole time that we're going through now is to learn that this is actually happening, and to be able to, call upon these enlightened parts of ourself, and learn to listen to, trust, and follow these loving, enlightened parts. So the fifth dimension is the first step, basically, of this whole new vibrational chapter for the new earth. And when Dolores Cannon and other teachers talk about the new earth, that's what they're meaning. That's
Right.
Time and space. Again, it's a long answer to a short question. Sorry. Time and space are illusions. This is the way my guides put it, under the dominion of love and light. But when we live in the shadow world, where we think we are our mind and our body and our ego, then we have a very distant relationship with all of that. You understand?
100%. And this is, I mean, I love your answer. So go on and on.
Thanks.
We have a bridge here behind the house,
Yeah.
huge, very famous Coronado Bridge. And quite like with San Francisco Golden Gate, many people come here to suicide.
Oh.
And of course,
Wow.
With the previous history of with psychiatric psychotherapy, my experience, which is vast, and of course I talk about my own experience, this is the wonderful thing about you and I, is there's that experiential knowledge that, of course, because of this issue, we're wanting to come in and share it as much as all of the, sort of psychological research. The people who are in those desperate places, the 5 times more than women, are in that ego place. For me, the reason people are so desperate and so disconnected and have this lack of belonging is because they are not in alignment. There's no noise to say, oh gosh, I am safe, loved and supported. I am completely brilliant, and there's an incredible knowledge in there that I've had since coming out of the birth canal, which is not there. So whenever I've talked to people in a lot of trouble, of course there's no vision and mission and sense of purpose, because there's no noise. So there's a disconnect.
Right.
And those are the people standing on the edge of the bridge. Sure. Those are the people in shame attack because of the porn addiction or whatever it might be.
Sure.
And there is this kind of coming of, I think this is some of what you're saying, oneness, that we are Mother Nature. I heard somebody say, who was that the other day, that there's the same cosmic material in our right eye as the moon and in our left eye as the sun, or something similar.
Yes.
And I thought, yay, it's getting closer and closer for well, me, and I'm a teacher, obviously, so more and more people, and people teaching me, and it was just like, oh God, okay, this is getting better the more open I am.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, this astrophysicist, said, I heard a similar thing yesterday, that the chemical creation of our bodies is directly traceable to the stars. You know, and of course, Joni Mitchell sings, "We are stardust, we are golden." We've got to get ourselves back to the garden. That's such a great word. It's true, but I love what you've said there. As my guides say, the heart knows what the mind struggles to believe. And so, again, to bring it full circle about the masculine will, which we all have, and the feminine love, which we all have, and then the wisdom to be in harmony and balance and draw on all of those resources as we need to, that then frees us to open our heart to that love and to truly be empowered, which is, not power over, right? It's not this masculine bullying that we're trying to heal in the world right now. And it's becoming more obvious that we need to do that in order to survive and to grow and to live in a world of peace and justice. But dominion, as Lazarus talks about, or partnership, as Riane Eisler talks about. So, Riane is great. I just want to mention her briefly. She took the historical research of human history, and she said there are these 2 models of society. One is partnership, which is the matriarchy, and the other is the dominator, which is the masculine. And the dominator exists for short periods of time because it is a lot of sound and fury signifying very little, sadly, whereas the feminine is about the babies, the food, the table, the home, the community, the church, the music, the painting, keeping it all going while, the men go through their testosterone madness, over and over again.
Yes.
So the younger teachers that are coming up now in their 20s and 30s, I see this very much, as well as the theme of men's spirituality. I just want to touch on this. They're coming from a place where their experience in other lifetimes, I really believe this, is not distracted at all by the confusion and the shadow that most of us get hypnotized by in the current world. So they can just, and this is what you and I have learned to do as well. Anyone can learn to see the truth if we open our hearts and we become vulnerable to what is happening in the moment. Then, spirit will work through us. But if we have this mask and this agenda, and we're trying to make something happen or make somebody do something or get something from someone, then it's a very different story. And most of the world is still doing that. Most of mankind, you know, is still doing that story.
Yeah. I heard somebody say the other day, which was really powerful, this is simply a 3D meat suit that we're in.
Right, right, right.
And I thought, hell yes, kind of thing.
Sure.
That now it's oh so present in my mind, that coming from,
Sure.
you know, previously for me, like so many, as you say,
Yeah.
I had probably all of my teens in this narcissistic me. If I don't look that way, I'll be rejected. Again, projection.
Sure.
You know, I'm not enough as I am. I'm what you want me to be. Crazy stuff.
Sure.
And of course, we have the audacity to point the finger at someone who's free and connected and, I don't know, beating a drum or wearing some beautiful beads or something, to say, oh, they're really crazy. Meanwhile, you know, we're just suppressing the world with our, oh, God, I mean, it's just devastating. The amount of people who are contorted into this terrifically repressed place.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, I think the men have to take some of the responsibility for that, because it is a very patriarchal society, and women are, I mean, I said this, you know, a few weeks ago, one of the most shocking and powerful songs that I ever heard in my life was John Lennon's song, "Woman is the Nigger of the World." And it was like, whoa, you know, hello, you know, and he said, the black people have no problem with me using this word because they completely agree with what I have to say in this song. And the women have no problem because they've been living with this for centuries. So it's just you white guys, you know, you're uptight white people that are getting all twisted out of shape here. And of course that song is 30, 40 years old at this point, and it's still, you know.
For sure. There is a balance in it, though, in my opinion. And this is the kind of sense where people are driven and anxious, is you can't get it right in many regards, all of us, but men in particular. I can't get this stuff right. Either I'm abusive and objectifying you, or, you know, or I'm too passive and you don't want me. There is that middle ground, which is, well, essentially, if we look at the primitive, there's some fairness in that, but we abuse it to the point that we lose the human and the spiritual. We just become, again, that human meat suit that is there to get, you know, whatever.
Right.
But again, this for me is why it's so important to have role models like yourself who are going viral.
Right.
I don't know how we can make that happen today, but I think we should. Because there is that balance between what it is that we're designed to do as humans naturally versus how we're raping and torturing and suppressing and everything, this horrific global phenomenon that, okay, yeah, the little white people are now talking about. Good for us, you know, a bit slow on the uptake here.
Right.
So to me, there needs to be somehow an education that says, okay, there's man and woman and reproduction and survival of the fittest, and there's equally, how do we take care of one another because we're brothers and sisters at the end of the day.
Sure, exactly. Well, you know, the whole, I mean, Darwinism has been, you know, rammed down everyone's throat to accept that this is reality and this is nature and that's it, end of story. But like you're saying about the indigenous cultures, they don't see nature in that light at all. You know,
exactly.
She is our mother. She provides for us. She feeds us. She clothes us. She puts a roof over our head. She puts the water in our bowl and in our bath, etc. And you know, they see life as sacred. And for us to be living in this cosmic moment when you know, the planet has the exploitation and abuse of poor Mother Earth has never been at a higher pitch, and the obvious effects of that have never been more dangerous or more fragile. You know, it just shows. I mean, it's like, as you and I have worked with many different addictions and addicts and recovery and all the rest of it. You know, that mindset is truly bottoming out. I mean, just to get political for a moment, this tax bill that has been passed to benefit the wealthy at the serious suffering now of the middle class and the poor, who have already been suffering like mad for the last 8 years, if they weren't before, is just really lit the fuse for the next revolution, whatever that's going to look like.
I agree. And equally, for me, there's a balance that particularly, it's been shocking for me to move from the UK to the States to see the physical manifestation of stupidity, and turning your eye from this.
Right.
Is in many regards, equally, I appreciate the madness in terms of, us as little people being fed in every manageable, in every sense of that word, suppression. Equally, you have to be working really hard, Lou, to be uneducated about what we are doing to ourselves as the little people. So, in part, for me, there is, if we want to complain about being done to, then okay, why are you putting McDonald's into your mouth every day? Why is it that your wife is so unhappy and you're not talking to her about it? Why is it the kids biting people at school and you're not looking at it because kids do that? If you want to be abused and so on, why are you watching horror movies that prime your unconscious to be anxious and therefore you've now got to suppress yourself? I mean, wake up. If there's a problem and you're being abused like this, why are you educating yourself and torturing yourself to be the little people who are abused by putting all this terrible stuff in your psyche so that you're more numbed out?
Right.
Wake up.
Right.
So clearly that ignites something in me. There is a balance of any of us. It is that the kind of chaining of the elephant in many regards, that, you chain a young animal, they're then conditioned that, the irony, of course, you chain a lion, a tiger, whatever it is, as an adult animals, they could not only pull out, but terrorize everything in its path. And I appreciate we've been conditioned, but I also appreciate there is enough information coming at us about redressing the balance, but many, many people are too cowardly. And that, ignites my sort of, well, hang on a minute, we can scream rape and torture, but actually you're the one staying there, my darling.
Sure. That's right. I mean, that's very well said, hon. The, victim consciousness is truly the epidemic, that the planet is striving to wake up from. And like a drunk crashing out, or whatever analogy you want to use, it's we're headed towards a brick wall at full speed at this point, wondering when it's going to happen, not if it's going to happen. But at the same time, the green juice people and the Robert Bly people and the Tony Robbins and the Brene Brown and Marianne Williamson, and there's so many, Byron Katie, and Lazarus and Oren and Daben and Abraham. There's so many great inspirations. So thank God we don't all have to, eat from the same plate and, think that we're getting our needs met. But it is, my guides say discernment and detachment, and to not, the key is to not feed the drama, to, Gandhi and Dr. King, and John Lennon and many others, see what you want to change, but don't, Abraham says you can't fight against something and have less of it,
Brilliant. Who said? Abraham.
Yeah. You can't be in resistance to something without feeding it. So it's like,
yes.
Hey, that's tricky. Let me think about that.
Yes. And Andy White's a quote comes to mind. I contacted him recently. He wrote Going Mad, he's beautiful. Going Mad to Stay Sane.
Okay.
Very small book. And actually, I didn't know this, but he and I went to the same university. He was there about 10 years before me.
Is it David White, perhaps? Poet?
No, Andy.
Okay.
Andy White.
Yeah.
I got hold of him the other day because his book's out of print, and said, is this the right quote? He couldn't remember, but it's seared on my brain from I was about 18, 19 when I read his book, that says, if we do not heed the soul's rumblings when it knocks on our door, it will find its way in through the window.
Sure.
And I just thought, okay, wow. It does, again, what we resist persists. And the energy with which we focus in on the thing we don't want, we can't see all of the things we do because we're too busy doing this.
Sure.
And of course, that's where people get disenchanted at best, and I suppose desperate at worst.
Right. That's right. That's right. Well, and of course, you know, the technology, the solutions to energy, to pollution, to cleaning up the oceans or the nuclear waste, or, you know, to reforest the planet, or to deal with the climate change. I mean, all those answers are there, and they've been there in great abundance for, you know, the better part of a century, according to David Icke and David Wilcock and many others, Elon Musk, you know, all the rest of them. So, you know, it's not that we can't fix the situation, but we need to acknowledge that the situation needs fixing, and that the fixing of it, as you said earlier, is a gift in disguise. You know, I mean, there's a quote from the Bible where it says, God means everything for good. And, you know, if you can take the death of your loved one, your cancer, the loss of your car keys, whatever it is, and go, okay, here's today's growth opportunity with me and my loving higher power. Then you're starting to think fifth dimensionally. Then you're starting to think like your higher self thinks, you see.
Okay, that was nice then. I met somebody the other day who said, I'll meet you there. And I thought, I bet that's good, but I'm not sure what that means. There's, who tells this story or analogy? I often get confused. I don't know that there's so much of a difference between metaphor and analogy, but I never quite get it.
That one over and over. Analogy is literal and metaphor is poetic, I think.
Okay, so we got a bit of both then in this one. I can't remember who says it, but he, I'm sure, was saying, you know, if you drop your car keys in the house, but it's a bit dark because the lights are out, so you sort of go out under the street light because it's a little bit easier, and somebody comes along and says, can I help? So, yes, I've dropped my keys. Well, whereabouts were you? Well, in the house.
Right.
And this is the kind of, again, phenomenon, epidemic of, well, look in the easier place because the other place is, you know, under the iceberg, and I'd rather it stay there because it's all a bit difficult.
Sure.
Meanwhile, I'll suffer and blame everyone else.
Well, again, that's the victim consciousness that we're trying to, you know, see. The great thing to come back to men and women for a second, and to come back to relationship, and you know, what a tremendous resource love and friendship and partnership and relationship can be for all of us. You know, is the bridge into that higher love. You know, it's the bridge into that spiritual love, where Rumi and so many great poets, you know, talk about the beloved, you know, and that you know, love is love is love, you know. So anything that puts you on that into that movie is a great gift and a great awakening and a great healing. And so I just want to say that, you know, as the women of the world, my dear, truly begin to find their voice and their power and their passion and their vision, and that is coming as surely as the sun is going to rise every day, the men, you know, are being invited to support that, and to humble ourselves a bit, and to respect the wisdom of the women, the wisdom of the feminine, and the wisdom of the earth. And if we see that that is the greatest gift that life has ever offered us on this planet, which is certainly my opinion about it, then we will have healed truly this this cosmic drama that we've been going through since the fall of Atlantis about 70,000 years ago, according to research.
If there are men, sorry?
We'll get there. I know we'll get there.
Yes. For me, the conditions of that would be people like yourself and Lewis Howell and, you know, all the people we're mentioning and more, to stand with that informing men. Because what I see, rightly or wrongly, is men who are the more feminine man only,
Right.
saying, oh, poor you, and yeah, you go girl, speak about it, or the sort of repressed angry men who go, oh well, yeah, oh, you've outed us, to the kind of men who just don't want to talk about it because the women are so angry. You know, for me, it needs to be an informed man
Right.
that is saying, wow, okay, how can I support this?
Yes.
Fantastic, thank goodness this is coming. Whatever I can
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
I'm behind you.
Yes.
Rather than a reactive, ill-informed, another reason for men to be scared of women because we're so furious. There's so many, for me, elements to how we support each other as
Sure.
brothers and sisters, and
Sure.
advocates of one another.
Sure.
But we can't do it if we're ill-informed and ill-equipped with which to support people who are speaking out.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's very well said. We have to all make our own inner journey to heal our own unworthiness and victim consciousness, which is again the daily experience. When things are good, honestly, for me, when things are good, it's like, yeah, there's no problem. When things are not good, it's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I have to deal with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's like that we have. See why? Just want to say this. Why 90% of the people that have shown up at any spiritual event that I've attended or created in the last 30 years have been women, is because up until now, women carrying the predominant feminine energy of the planet, as you're blessed to do, know in their bodies through their menstrual cycle and giving birth and every other thing that you are connected to the earth, the moon, the tides. It's all connected. You know that.
Yes.
We have to get that through you. We get that.
Yes. Well, quite.
Right? Yeah. No, we do. I mean,
Yes.
women is the grounding of men's consciousness, you see.
Yes.
Okay. But then, like you're saying here, it's like creating a new contract. So you're quite right. We need to value the gift of the feminine energy, and we also need to re-qualify our relationship to what is the masculine energy all about in this world, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a comedian. What's his name? Oh my gosh, he's so funny in my view. He's South African, very, very informed politically. Man, what's his name? It may come to me, but he does a skit. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's incredibly confronting and crude, but oh so true, where he's talking about men and the ridiculousness, I suppose, of how it is to point the finger that you're feminine or vulnerable. There's that word beginning with P that men use consistently, younger men. You're an ex because you're crying or whatever it is. And so he does this skit about the naivete, the fact that men advertise their ignorance when they sort of out each other for having feminine part of them. And it's a brilliant sketch where he's just says, the punchline being, hello, without these women, without femininity, you're dead, And it's just this incredible skit where he turns it so relatably to angry people who need a laugh, to this kind of pin drop silence across the room,
Right. That's great.
Oh gosh,
yeah,
we
no,
need
that's
each
great.
other so much.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've spent time with the Lakota, and the grandmothers are the first ones to enter the sacred circle. That's the place of honor, and then they set the tone for the grandfathers to come in, and and then the daughters come in, and then the sons come in, and that's the order of life, in the indigenous cultures. And it's like, not only do we not exploit the weak, we honor the vulnerability. Again, there isn't another word for it, as like you're saying, as our connection to spirit. What's more vulnerable than giving birth or dying, for example, or making love, if you like, and you know, that's those are intense, powerful moments, obviously life-changing moments for everyone involved in that experience. And yet, you know, we treat all of this in the Western world like it's a bad joke.
There's a story, and I forget the man's name, and I just every time it annoys me because I've had the opportunity to research it again and again. He's a man that used to hang out with Robert Bly, and he's a tribesman, but he's trained as a psychologist.
Okay.
And he said whenever he goes back to the tribe as the elder, really, there was a time, this was many years ago now, that he tells a story. He was trying to explain to the children the concept of Western insurance and therapy.
Right.
And they were saying, what, you people insure yourself against loss?
Right.
Where's the learning? You know, and there's these little kids.
Right.
And he's describing psychotherapy to them.
Right.
And they say, you mean people live in boxes on their own, work in boxes, drive in boxes, and then come into a room, a box, to talk up to you on a one-to-one about how disconnected they are.
Right.
So he's kind of, you know, more and more hit by this.
Right.
And he was describing the epidemic for men and women of isolation and a lack of belonging and problems with self-worth and so on. And they said, but you're saying they live in these high-rise places in boxes? And he said, yeah. And they said, why don't they bury through the walls and so they can all be together and go outside and play and listen to music instead?
Right, right, right.
And those people put me out of a job, and I'd be happy for it, you know.
Sure. Well, it's you know, our jobs are changing, you know, every day, like we're saying here, you know, because we're you know, we're listening deeply, you know, to our inner guidance, you know, with life and how the world that we're living in, etc. And so you see, you know, I have my own challenges, but there's no doubt in my mind that there is a higher power that does love and care for all of us. And if I am willing and able to get out of my own way on a for real basis, then the answers come, and the work shows up, and the money flows, and you know, life is good. So most people don't know that or have forgotten that, you know. And I really do see the world over the next few years, where, you know, whether it's through the internet or in other ways, you know, where there are going to be, you know, huge connections of millions of people around healing and awakening and caring for Mother Earth and bringing peace into the world. Because, like we said earlier, you know, this is what the feminine does. You know, she sees the need of the moment, and she rises in herself to be to hold the answer, basically, and to invite her children to find the answer for themselves. So
yeah.
it's a wild time to be alive on this planet.
It surely is, yes, and a very rare one. What is that figure? We have the possibility of us being alive, born to our parents, alive with the chemical makeup that we have on the planet at the moment, is 1 in 4 trillion. Right. And yet a lot of us get up in the morning and it's like, I don't really feel like doing that. You know?
Sure. Well, Einstein has that great quote where he says, you know, the choice becomes very simple. Either nothing in life is a miracle or everything is.
Well, quite. And this is the thing, Lou, when I speak to some people, God love them, because was I ever in that? No, I wasn't. He'll say, I don't know, I'll say, visualize, think about what you want, not what you don't want. Have some faith, whatever. I don't believe in miracles. And I'm like, oh, this conversation is over. I love you, but I've got to go somewhere else quickly. You know? What?
Sure.
Incredible.
No, I know. I mean, my quote, this, because I've lived this one too, which is, behind every cynic is a broken-hearted romantic.
Well, quite. Exactly.
but you see, the great thing is, like, when you're with Tony Robbins or whoever, you know, is helping you to remember who you are, you know, in an emotional, for real way, then you go, wow, my God, I forgot all that. You know, I
Yeah.
forgot how beautiful life can be, and how blessed I am to be here, and how gifted I am. Just another thing here, Abraham says there's about 30 solutions to every single problem that we create in our lives.
Yes.
Literally. So,
Yes.
you know, we're looking at, like, maybe there's one, maybe there's two, you know, and infinite intelligent source is over here going, there's at least 25 more I can think of, my friend, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the kind of, I think, man plans, God laughs experience, where
Right.
so many things, you know, it's not what we expect. We're sort of pushed off kilter. There's so many different realities based on choice after choice after choice that we make.
Yes.
And this is the, again, I guess, victim mentality, which, you know, it's so in your face, that term, but the kind of devastating contortion of our minds of this can't get any better, or poor me, or whatever,
Right.
where what I'll teach often is, and I had to learn this obviously myself,
Yeah.
we and our experience right now is the result of choice after choice after choice after choice after choice.
Right.
So, you know, my friend lost his temper with me, or I lost my job, or I broke my leg, or my mother-in-law ex. And it's kind of like, and you think you've got nothing to do with that.
Right.
And you're powerless to
Right.
change it.
Right.
And particularly when, you know, I have a very dear friend, but when parents do this, when there's a struggle in the relationship, or for whatever reason, and it's, I can't leave because of the kids or whatever, and I just
Right.
think, oh wow, I wish we could all inject each other with a bit of faith, you know, and more modeling
Right.
of that integrous place that we can come from.
Right.
Life opens up. I mean, you know this, it's sort
Yeah.
of shocking the degree to which we get all of this unexpected stuff when you move on a place of integrity.
Right. 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 Yeah. If we give our challenges and our problems to our higher power, whatever name we want to use, and we give it with our whole heart, which for me
Yes.
is meditation and prayer and journaling, then you know, and I sincerely let it go, and I give thanks, knowing that there is a solution that is coming in the perfect time, in the perfect way. And
Yes.
then I do my human best to stay connected to that vibration of peace and trust and gratitude. Then it has to manifest.
Yes. And I think that's the yin to the yang of ego and instinct. Is so many of us in an egotistical place is, I have to do it the right way at the right time with the right person and say the right thing. And the irony, of course, is obviously that's a recipe for pain and torture and
Yeah.
suppression and
Yeah.
suffering.
Yeah.
And of course, the other side of it is with that kind of surrender. I've done what I can do to the best of my ability. Now I'll give it up, because essentially I'm kidding myself. I think I can control it. And then things come at the right time in the right way. And it's just like, okay, good.
Yes.
Humility is the way to go, my
That's
friends.
right. That's right, sweetheart. Yes. Humility versus humiliation.
Quite.
Yeah. Yeah. And humiliation is just that over identification with control, and thinking that we know what's possible, and you know, it's not working, where we
Yeah.
don't, when we recognize we don't know.
Yes.
And that's a good thing. That's the beginning of humility. Then, you know, we're inviting spirit to co-create through us and with us.
Yes. And everybody else at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
That's the me too, isn't it? That's the there's blood in my veins too. Thank you. Welcome to the human race kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. That's right. That's right. Well, have we set the world to rights once again?
I think so for now, yes. What
I,
does that say behind you? It's probably very symbolic of the discussion.
it says
They,
one day you will.
well, quite. There we go. That's a
Yeah.
nice place to end.
Yeah. I think it was an ad for something, but I just took the picture. Yes, it is. It's perfect. One day you will. And today can be that day, you know, when
Quite, exactly.
when we listen to, trust, and follow that inner guidance, and we let ourselves love ourselves and do our best to love each other.
And we can start at any point we wish, not tomorrow, not in the new year, not when, then kind of thing. Now.
There's only now. This
Quite.
is Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, and Abraham. There is only now, my friends.
Yeah, we're not promised another single moment. So, as I do, I only do what I want to do when I want to do it. So it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, sweetheart. Likewise, a joy.
Thank you, Lou, very much. Shall we end with what it is we're doing and offering on a more wide scale in terms of teachings and so on?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I do my Monday now, 7 p.m. Pacific time lives, about half an hour, usually guided by people's questions, which on my Poppy page of Facebook, people know to come on that page and be, you know, we're talking about some pretty robust, emotionally sophisticated things, which is marvelous.
Yeah.
And then I have my page Leaders Lounge, which is there's more sort of ethical leadership focus on that one, although it's in its infancy, to be fair. Then I've got my wonderful Poppy Sprague page, which is just, I'm the meme queen. And obviously I work one-to-one predominantly with people who are affecting from the top down in integrity leadership. And that, if that makes sense, what that is, you know, people who are really wanting to lead from a healthy, grounded place, informed rather than ego-driven. And then there is my online program, which I'm fascinated to see and so heartened to feel is getting 5-star reviews about self-mastery and understanding all of really what you and I have been talking about, which gets you to a place of, I would be my friend, I would want to work with me, I would want to be my partner, etc., to that place of joy. So it's fascinating. I love that program. It's very new, as you know, but that's kind of what's going on for me pretty much.
That's great. That sounds so exciting. No, I until I talk to you, I honestly don't know what you're up to, you know, so that's why this is a great gift for me to stay connected with you, because you're pushing everything, moving everything in the great direction that you are. It's so exciting to hear all that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And very much, though, very much held, informed, excited by, rejuvenated by your lives as well, Lou.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, very good. That's my cue then.
Yes.
I'll take the ball and run with it. So that's wonderful. Thanks so much. That was really beautiful, Poppy, as always. So yeah, I'm doing still the morning prayers, 9 to 9:30, Monday through Friday. And then this week...
UK time, yeah?
Say again?
UK time.
Yes, UK time, yes. UTC, I guess, yeah? And... or GMT, whatever you like. But it's there for the whole day. And so if you don't have to get up in the middle of the night if you're in the States, whatever. Some people do, Poppy, but not everyone has to. So that's 30 minutes of working with the material that inspires me and setting the tone for the day. And then what I'm segueing into now is beginning this week, tomorrow, Monday morning, I'm offering a new program which is called Channeling for Change. And it's a weekly mentorship program. So I'm inviting people to sign up for a week at a time. And basically what we're going to do is start with the morning prayer. And then a half an hour later, I'm going to come on through Zoom as we're here now and do a catch up with people, but set the focus very particularly for the theme of the week. The first week is about healing. The second week is about channeling. And the third week is about manifesting. And so on the, in the calendar here, as we come up to the solstice, I'm excited to work with those energies. And then you'll also get a one-to-one session with me whenever you want to schedule it during the week. So, and it's a way, we're both exploring the same themes here, my friend. It's a way to have more interaction, more feedback, and work with find what really works for people. And I'll also be channeling from my guides every day on the Zoom there. So it'll be a way to work, mentally and energetically every day. So I'm happy about that. So that's on my page there. And then I do the Spirit Talks a couple times a week. So I did one last night, I think Saturday, yeah. And I still have my holiday special, which you can get a reading with me for 30, 60, or 75. If you get 2-hour readings, we'll give it to you for 100. So that's me doing a card reading and channeling my guides for you. And it's a great way to tap into these higher dimensional, higher self energies.
And as I've said, I have to say, this is what I like about, I really do, my program and your offerings of, I think genuinely, if people want to take a cheaper fee for you or for me, great. Equally, my program until the 31st of December is just $65. So for me, both, after that, it ain't. For both of what we're offering, honestly, there's no excuse for people to not be supported by that. And I've been one of the people who've used you for sessions. And honestly, I know I've said this before, but I train with the best of the best people. Truly, I'm so picky and perfectionistic about, I must train with people who are going to look after me and teach me to look after other people from a faith you can stand on place. None of this sort of intellectual crap. When I met you and came off the phone, I know I've said it, was just like, he's the best therapist I've come across, and he's not a therapist. So the integration of you and, again, your spiritual work, but your experiential knowledge and all of it, it's just like, wow. And I can actually get you and not have to be a millionaire in order to do so. It's just, I'm so grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart. My pleasure. It's a joy knowing you, and I'm so proud of you and so excited for all that you've brought out into the world. And I know it's just the beginning.
Amen to that.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Lou, very much.
Virtual
I send big love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Or a hand hug, as they say.
Hand hug. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
See you soon.
Thanks, sweetheart. Thanks a million.
Okay.
Peace and blessings. Okay.
Thank you, Lou.
You're welcome, darling. Bye for now.